In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro addressed issues of national importance on his program Con Maduro Más on Monday. The United Nations Organization for Palestinian Refugees warned that over 70,000 Palestinian children suffer from malnutrition in the Gaza Strip. And U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to sanction Russia if a peace agreement in the Ukrainian conflict is not reached in 50 days. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro addressed issues of national importance on his program Con Maduro Más on Monday. The head of state said that during the Bolivarian Military Day, he launched lines within the framework of the Ayacucho Plan, which complements the 7 Transformations Plan with the aim of accelerating and deepening the Bolivarian military revolution in all its dimensions. On the other hand, the president denounced that the United Nations High Commissioner Volker Turk is an agent of the U.S. government and of imperialist and colonialist Europe. At the same time, the head of state said that Nayib Bukele became president of El Salvador through fraudulent maneuvers in the electoral processes. In Venezuela, the VEN25+ campaign command held a meeting to strengthen Chavism electoral strategy for the municipal elections on July 27th. The meeting focused on the articulation of the municipal and state commands to promote and guarantee the participation of the largest number of voters for the upcoming elections to elect mayors and councillors as well as their alternates. The political sector also established the methods of mobilization of the people to facilitate the arrival of voters to their corresponding voting centers. The VEN25+ campaign command also prioritized guaranteeing the participation, especially of the youngest and new voters. As a prelude to the 5th ordinary session of the Cuban Parliament, legislators have started debates focused on the country's economic and social development. Over 2 days, parliamentarians gathered in 11 permanent working committees will discuss more than 80 issues of impact for the Cuban society, such as the energy situation, food production, water supply, transportation, and health. On Monday, President Miguel Díaz-Canel attended the Economic Affairs Committee, where the recent performance of the economic plan was assessed. The new session of Parliament, to begin on Wednesday, July 16th, proposes a comprehensive evaluation of the government program aimed at correcting distortions and rebooting the national economy. Brazil prosecutor's office entered Monday in the final stage of the criminal proceedings against former President Jair Bolsonaro and 7 other defendants for the attempted coup to prevent then-President-elect Lula da Silva from taking office after the 2022 elections. The defendants face charges of attempted coup, violent abolition of the rule of law, armed criminal organizations, aggravated damage and deterioration of property. If found guilty, Bolsonaro could receive a 40-year close jail sentence. Monday's closing arguments are the last opportunities for both the prosecution and the defense to present their cases, analyze the evidence, and reinforce their positions in favor or against conviction of the defendants. Once all the parties present their arguments, lead judge Alexander de Moraes will declare the case ready for trial. On Monday, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum addressed the recent tariff letters issued by the government of the United States, stressing these were sent to all countries in the world and reinforcing Mexico's trade strategy, which has sovereignty as a non-negotiable.
Entonces, en ese marco,
In this
¿qué debemos
context,
hacer?
what should we do as a
como
government?
gobierno?
First, we should defend the strategy we have been pursuing because it is producing results. Second, we should inform the Mexican people that there is a working group on security issues. where we have always placed sovereignty as a non-negotiable principle, and we are also working on trade issues. We hope that these working groups will enable us to reach an agreement. And if not, then we will have to make other decisions.
U.S. President Donald Trump scored a Supreme Court victory Monday after the top judicial body upheld the executive's decision to fire nearly 1,400 employees from the Education Department. The Supreme Court's ruling overturned a federal judge's order which had reinstated the laid-off employees and prevented the administration from transferring key functions to other federal agencies. The move empowers Trump to continue dismantling the Department of Education as part of his attempt to reduce the federal government's role in education and hand more controls over to the states. U.S. federal law prohibits the Education Department from controlling school activities, including curriculum, instruction, and staffing. According to liberal groups, the top court's decision dealt a devastating blow to public education in the country. In the United States, authorities said 9 people died in a fire at the Gabriel House assisted living home in Fall River, Massachusetts. The flames broke out around 9:30 p.m. local time on Sunday. Fall River Fire Chief Jeffrey Bacon added that when they arrived, they found heavy flames and smoke coming through the main entrance and several people hanging out of the windows. Over 30 people were rushed to hospitals and 5 firefighters suffered from minor injuries. Investigations are ongoing to determine what caused the fire.
That's what folks need to understand. This was not a situation where teams arrived and people were able to get out easily. All of these people needed assistance. As you saw, many were in wheelchairs, many were immobile, many had oxygen tanks. They were severely compromised individuals in this assisted living facility, which made it all the more challenging. And you can imagine a fire raging. You're dealing with a smoke inhalation, which we know was devastating. 5 of our guys had to be treated at the hospital. But just how precarious this was with oxygen tanks, so many of them on, and the presence of fire. It's unbelievable that there wasn't an even greater loss of life.
The U.S. is on alert for severe windstorms that could cause flooding in several states. The National Weather Service warned of the return of the risk of flash flooding in the southern plains and the Midwestern United States, including parts of central Texas, as well as of widespread thunderstorms. Authorities advise residents to avoid unnecessary travel unless fleeing an area subject to flooding or under an evacuation order. The Weather Forecast Center also predicts intense heat over the next few days, especially in the eastern and western United States. Likewise, the weather in Mexico is once again setting off alerts. Precisely on Monday, weather forecasters warned that the interaction of the Mexican monsoon with tropical waves 11 and 12 has created extreme conditions that extend from the northwest to the southeast of the country. In this context, the National Water Commission and the National Weather Service have alerted the population of possible torrential rains, hail, and strong winds. In this context, authorities specified that although rain prevails in several regions, other areas of the country are facing an intense heat wave that could reach 45 degrees centigrade. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The United Nations Organization for Palestinian Refugees warned that over 70,000 Palestinian children suffer from malnutrition in the Gaza Strip. UNRWA details that the shortage of food due to the Israeli blockade has increased the number of children with acute malnutrition as well as the risk of mortality. The United Nations Children's Fund reported in June more than 5,800 children with malnutrition in the Strip. In view of this, the International Institute demands the Israeli regime to end the blockade and allow the access of aid immediately and on a larger scale. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres reiterated on Monday his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, warning that the humanitarian crisis has reached dire dimensions.
But what we are witnessing in Gaza is a level of death and destruction that has no parallel in recent times. And it is something that undermines undermines the most basic conditions of human dignity for the population of Gaza, independently of the enormous suffering that they are having. We absolutely need a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. And I hope that the parties are able to overcome, both parties are able to overcome the difficulties that they still find for that ceasefire to take place. But the ceasefire is not enough. It is essential that that ceasefire leads to a solution, and that solution can only be possible if both Palestinians and Israelis can have a state where they can exercise their rights. The idea, and that is why we are going to have in July one conference on the two-state solution, the ideal that it would be possible to have 5 million people inside the country, in their own land, without any rights, is something that is totally against humanity and totally against international law.
The United Nations denounced increased violence in Myanmar, displacing more than 150,000 Rohingya refugees to Bangladesh. The United Nations Refugee Agency noted that the arrival of these refugees is the largest in the shortest period of time since 2017, when some 750,000 people fled violence in Rakhine State. In this regard, the United Nations Agency warned about the serious deterioration of humanitarian conditions in the Cox's Bazar refugee camps in Bangladesh. The United Nations Refugee Agency report reveals that the new arrivals add up to nearly 1 million Rohingya refugees living in extremely precarious conditions in overcrowded camps. After 2 days of violence, the Spanish government mobilized civil guard agents and local police officers in the Murcia municipality of Torre Pacheco to prevent further attacks by the far right against migrants. On Sunday night, a strong police presence was established at the entrance to the San Antonio neighborhood. The measure comes after on Friday and Saturday Moroccan migrants in the neighborhood were attacked by people from outside the town. According to the government representative in the region of Murcia, Mariola Guevara, 6 individuals were arrested as well. The government office announced that additional troops are being deployed to prepare for any potential incidents in the coming days. Foreign ministers of Central America and European Union High Representative Kaja Kallas formally launched the association agreement between the two regions. The first meeting of the Association Council took place on July 14, 2025 in Brussels. Participants activated the areas of trade, cooperation and political dialogue. In this sense, the Central American representation presented to the Europeans a path of action to achieve a greater opening of markets and investment, a priority action for both regions in the current scheme of new tariffs and economic pressures as well. For its part, Europe announced a considerable increase in its cooperation programs in Central America through the Global Gateway Initiative, which has approved a global budget of 300 billion euros for development cooperation. And we have a second show break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Fun a show break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to sanction Russia if a peace agreement in the Ukrainian conflict is not reached in 50 days. The president has stressed that new tariffs will be imposed at a level of 100%, as well as secondary taxes against the Russian country's trading partners. Trump stated that he will not need congressional approval to impose such secondary sanctions, and likewise, when questioned about the time frame, Trump said that it would be a very short time frame and blamed the Democrats for starting the Ukrainian conflict. In this context, the European Union announced Monday that it will evaluate applying tariffs worth of $84 billion to the United States in case of the trade negotiations fail. They also agreed to maintain a two-track strategy, indicating that they can be prepared to respond against Washington in case it is necessary. The European stock market opened with negative figures on Monday after U.S. President Donald Trump announced to impose a 30% tariffs on all goods from Mexico and European countries. The Frankfurt Stock Exchange was the hardest hit, with that of London being the only one to rise by 0.19%. In response, Brussels announced it will extend the suspension of countermeasures against the U.S. until early August and will continue to push for a negotiated solution. In Mexico, according to the General Director of the National Institute of Anthropology and History, Diego Prieto, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO designated the Huixca Rica route through the sacred site of Wirikuta as a World Heritage Site. Let's see.
Desde 1972,
Since 1972, UNESCO has issued the Convention for the Protection of the World Cultural and Natural Heritage. Within this convention, there is a representative list of the world cultural and natural heritage. This list protects a group of properties, places, cultural or natural expressions that humanity as a whole must take care of. Precisely to recognize the values that these properties have in terms of their historical meaning, their cultural character, their value for universal thought, and also for the care of the environment of our planet. Mexico now has 36 properties registered in this list.
On the other hand, Prieto pointed out that for the first time in Mexico, UNESCO has incorporated a living, practical and recognized indigenous culture.
For the first time in this list, in the case of Mexico, we are in the presence of a cultural expression, of a cultural tradition that refers to an indigenous culture which is still alive, to an indigenous tradition that, although it has ancestral origins, it is still practiced. It is still recognized by the Huixca people in a sacred geography that they also share with the nat'l Odin or Autumn Mexican.
And with this information, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For teleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.